So where do you start when you have this fantastic research result and you understand that you can actually impact human health? I will share my learnings from more than 10 years as a business coach at Innovation. My name is Patrik Blomquist. The goal of today's talk is to give you an increased understanding of some critical issues, help you avoid some common mistakes, and know when and where to seek help. So, how do you know that your idea is good? Well, what you need to do is to understand the user's need. What problem do you solve for them? After that, you need to understand what approach can you use to fulfill that need. Do you develop a drug, a device, or diagnostic? Then you need to understand the benefits, and if possible, can you quantify the benefit? How much better is your solution compared to the existing one? Then you need to map out the competition. There is always a big competition, because your users somehow deal with the problem today. This NABC model is something we use when we look at your ideas in order to help you find the critical points and develop your idea further. So how do you evaluate your need? You can't just go to a potential user and tell them what you just discovered. Instead, you should understand their problem. Do they see a problem when they do this or that? Then you need to understand how do they deal with the problem today, because somehow they solve it today. And thirdly, you would like to understand what would be a perfect solution for them. What is important for them to solve their problem? By doing that, you will gain a lot of useful insights from the users that can actually guide you in developing your idea further. So there are some important questions I think you should ask yourself very early on. First of all, what can this be developed to and how? Who would like to pay? What about assets and ownership? What are the critical assets and who controls those? Do I need to protect my assets? And what resources do I need to develop this? And what do you as a team want? You also need to understand how you should reach the user and also how you should measure your journey towards impact. These are things that we will talk about in this lecture, but also in the coming lectures. So we'll have lectures about impact, stakeholders, development, financing, IP, and so on. So what about assets and ownership? Well, first of all, you need to define the critical assets. Which are the assets that's really crucial to make this work? Is it the knowledge about the molecule? Is it the database? It can be very different. In Sweden, we have a very peculiar situation because we have a law called the Takeup exemption or lärarundantaget. That is a Swedish law that states that everyone working as a researcher at the university in Sweden owns their own intellectual property. At KI, we also have an IP policy that has the basis in the Takeup exemption, but then has an extended view on that. So actually at KI, you own a lot of the things that you invent. However, there are some exceptions. For example, if you work in the clinic, you're employed by the healthcare system and not at the university, which means that you don't own your intellectual property. There is a mechanism that allows you to take the ownership of your intellectual property, and we can help you with that. Also, if you're a student, you're not employed at all, which means that you own your intellectual property. And this is of course very relevant if you have master students working in your research group. You might have signed some sort of agreement that limits your chances to develop your findings further. I mentioned agreements, and I've listed a few of those that might be relevant for you. First of all, you have confidential agreements that states that everything I tell you is a secret and everything you tell me is a secret. You might also be part of an industrial collaboration. So maybe KI has a company collaboration and you're a part of that. That might limit your chances to develop something. You also might be part of a research consortia that has an agreement that states that everything invented in the consortia belongs to everyone, and you need to understand that. And when you start a company, you should write a shareholders or a founders agreement that says what you as founders should do in the company. You should also remember that you are not the same as your company. Your company is a legal entity from you, so even though you as a researcher own your IP, you have to transfer that into the company in order to make business. Team. Team is probably one of the most important assets. And you need to understand what skills you have and what you lack. So make a gap analysis to understand what you need to complement with. In the best of words, you have a very diversified team and also a very experienced team. And you should remember there's a difference between the core team, that probably is you and the research group in the beginning, and the extended team. Because you might work with external experts, for example. You might have a patent lawyer that is part of your extended team but not part of the core team. You might have scientific collaborators that you work with, or an advisory board, or a board of directors in your company. They can also support you because they sit on a lot of knowledge and a huge network. The same with investors. So choose your investors wisely. So what about the support from KA Innovation? How can we help you? Well, first of all, we have activities if you're just curious, if you have an invention, or even if you have a company. So we work with inspiration information, we help you to validate the impact potential of your idea, and also to incubate your company. We do that by the advice and coaching. We have some financial support from Vinnova. We run courses and seminars like this series. And we also have a network of investors, users, and payers. Remember, everything is confidential and free of charge. These are some examples of validation activities that we can do to support your project. First of all, we can look at the market. We can analyze the users and their needs. We can look at the intellectual property and if we need to protect that. We can help you develop a business plan or a business model. We can help you with some technical verification, legal support, and if needed, regulatory strategy. And what type of inventions do we work with? Well, basically we work with everything that comes from Karolinska Institutet. So we have everything from care and clinical practice, digital health, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, research tools. So, the take-home message of today's lecture is: understand the user's need, list your critical assets, understand your possibilities, align the team, and seek advice. My name is Patrik Blomquist, and me and my colleagues at KA Innovations, we are willing to help you. Thank you.